On this episode, I spoke with Dave Manser on the design process and collaboration that they use between all people within a school project, from the bursar, teaching staff, and other contractors.
So the idea of this podcast is to talk about collaboration during school projects and why it really is key in delivering something successfully and also efficiently. With most, if not all, furniture projects at a school, I'd argue there's a degree of collaboration and coordination, obviously, whether it's with other trades, but we're all working for the same objective, which ultimately is to complete something on time, to budget. So collaboration right from the initial consultation through to design, manufacture, and then ultimately delivery and installation is key. So let's talk about the initial contact and that consultation with the school. It normally begins with direct contact, whether it's from the school themselves, an architect, or a building contractor. That's the point where we can establish the design intent for the project and therefore costs based on the school's requirements and specification. Sometimes the school are very clear in their objectives and they've already agreed a specification with an architect. And in other instances, we might propose something based on our past experiences, which might involve, as an example, us recommending a different material, which hasn't previously been considered, but will actually still meet their requirements and cost them less money. Either way, we've got our own drawing office at Witley Jones, so we'll always work towards proposing one or two options for the customer to consider and then ultimately approve and move forward. So then moving on to the manufacturing side, if we take a science lab as an example, which I personally like because there are multiple examples of collaboration with various trades, the initial contact will either come from a school bursar or a business manager, but then sometimes the head of science might be involved too, could even filter down to the specific teacher using the new lab. Collaboration is vital then to listen to their requirements. Everyone's got their own teaching style and techniques, which obviously we encourage, but we just need to make sure we kind of tick all those boxes and capture that within our plans, and everyone's clear on expectations then moving forward, as well as the more obvious themes such as colour schemes for carcasses, drawer fronts, doors. They might be subject specific, biology, chemistry, physics might be colour coordinated, or specific year groups might have colour coordination, but also then stool type colour, material worktop, could be a hardwood, could be a solid grade laminate, or even down to a sort of handle. Is it a specific requirement that the school have got for a handle, or will a metal recessed handle suffice? There might be more detailed elements which we also need to consider during manufacture. So overhangs on work surfaces, they're quite popular for science teachers to clamp items to, and then during demonstrations they've got that overhang. We can also gauge whereabouts within the room the main bulk of the teaching will be delivered from. So quite often the whiteboard, the interactive whiteboard, might be the focal point of the room, which we can then obviously capture within our drawing package. So a comfortable working space for each pupil as well is obviously a key consideration, especially when we're in a science lab environment and incorporating services onto work surfaces. So it may be that we can increase depths of worktops because the room dimensions allow, or if they don't, and we want a more comfortable workspace for each pupil, we can take them off the desktops and we can contain them below the height of the work surface in service containment units that we manufacture. We also provide physical samples, and again, that's a great way not only of involving all the requisite members of staff in the process, but then being clear on exactly what we are going to manufacture and for them to see and feel real differences. So if it's an Iroko hardwood worktop or it's a solid grade laminate worktop that are being considered, to actually touch, see, feel, discuss is a really important part of that collaboration as well. Also the hardware, we've got our own specially commissioned heavy duty crank piano hinge. We feel that offers more longevity than a standard self-closing hinge, as an example. Specific lab hardware, so how many gas taps or sockets are required to make the practical lessons work? That would need to be considered. Is a mixer tap okay for each sink? Do all sinks need to be the same size? If they do, which size works best? Or will you have a designated hand wash sink where you need hot and cold feeds? And whereabouts within the room is that? So with that science lab project, again, that collaboration would continue into delivery and installation. Quite often the school or even ourselves will request a coordination meeting just so that we can all work to the same objectives, and all ensure there's a sort of collective responsibility there to all ensure when the room will physically be ready with the building contractor before our arrival on site with new furniture, so there aren't any sort of nasty surprises. We typically expect to walk into a building that's first fixed in terms of services, flooring's down, and it's decorated, and we'll work towards that being the case 9 times out of 10. Obviously, it's not always possible, particularly in the summer holidays where resources are quite stretched for everyone. But we also can avoid any unwanted clashes then with existing radiators or sockets. So each school will then in turn have their own interpretation of how they deliver science, whether it's a subject-specific lab, whether it's a multi-purpose lab. You know, in the event of it being a multi-purpose lab, there are all these services to consider: gas, water, waste, electricity, and quite often we'll then be asked to provide a service location drawing to help with the collaboration, so everyone's clear on exactly where these items will physically be formed within the room. And again, that just avoids nasty, unwanted surprises when we turn up on site. Also, then a sequential way of working in terms of the installation. So we might go in, as an example, and install the perimeter workbenches and the cupboards underneath, for then the mechanical and engineering consultants to follow us around and second fix electrics, second fix gas, second fix water and waste, for then us to then go around again and decoratively cut in removable sink backs, as an example. We can then roll that out through pupil workstation installations and then teacher's desk, but there is always that sequential way of working, which obviously needs collaboration to be achieved. We'll also take a few measures internally at Witley Jones ourselves, which we know in our experience that will help the collaboration. So the backs of all perimeter units are removable. You know, in an ideal world, we would have the sequential way of working. That is not always possible on bigger projects where you've got multiple labs, or if another trade isn't available for whatever reason, it just means that our end date isn't impacted by others. So it just gives a bit of flexibility for installation, which is obviously key. All of these small items form part of a bigger picture, but without consideration, it's quite easy to see where things might start falling down. So collaboration, obviously, in our eyes, is key. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, this podcast has sort of demonstrated the fact that whether it's a science lab, whether it's a boarding project, a DT room, an IT suite, a library, a classroom, we obviously feel collaboration is key.
Thanks for listening. If you need to find a trusted supplier for your school, call 01905 780 059 or visit worcestershireeducationnetwork.co.uk.